Not all men, but 62 million. Not all men, only 62 million men who visited an online rape academy to learn how to abuse women from other men. Online Rape Academy exposes men seeking to learn abuse tactics. Recently, the internet has been full of stories of the 62 million men, or 62 million men, who apparently signed up to a rape academy to learn how to drug and rape women, and people are understandably shocked. They are really shocking headlines. However, and not to want to defend awful men, but that isn't actually what's been happening. These headlines are a little bit sensational, and the real horrific facts are being overshadowed by these clickbaity headlines. Today, I want to correct that. I want to correct the misinformation, tell you what's really been happening and what you should be worried about and what you shouldn't be worried about. Hey everyone, so today's video is quite heavy and I am going to be discussing an online community which was encouraging rape and sexual assault of women. This is going to be a very difficult topic, so I encourage you to use your best judgment before going forward with this video, and if you need to skip it, please do. No, I will not mind at all. Your well-being comes first, and that's all that matters. The story was first broken by CNN, who shared messages from men like this. I managed to record a clip once when I had my last 2 blank pills. My wife doesn't even know that I recorded it. They said, we can show you the messages he sent us. What he says he's doing to his wife is a crime. Posing as a user, we found him in a private group, one of many on the messaging app Telegram. At any hour, men from around the world gathered on the ZZZ group to swap advice on drugging and then filming the sexual assault of their partners while unconscious. Other examples of messages included, how much are you willing to pay to watch me F my wife while she sleeps? The CNN story said, the abuse shared via video and pictures in this group of nearly 1,000 users was treated as a commodity. The article went on to read, the world was confronted by this form of internet-enabled abuse in 2024 during the mass rape and drugging trial of Dominique Pellicot and 50 other men in southern France. It was on a so-called dating website in a chat room called Without Her Knowledge that Pellicot was able to connect with dozens of other men to instigate the rapes of his then-wife Giselle. While drugged unconscious by him, she was raped over 200 times by 70 men, not all of whom could be tracked down by police. The Pellicot case briefly shone a spotlight on this dark corner of the internet, but while Coco, the website involved, was shut down and public attention moved elsewhere, this behaviour did not disappear, with the insinuation, of course, that it simply moved to another website or several other websites. The men still committing these crimes are out there, they're just in a different place now. This CNN story uncovered one of those particular places. The article went on to read, one porn site, motherless.com, is home to more than 20,000 videos of so-called sleep content uploaded by users with hundreds of thousands of views. The website, which had around 62 million visits in February alone, and whose core audience is in the United States, describes itself as a moral-free file host where anything legal is hosted forever. However, the article goes on to point out, the legality of some material posted is in serious doubt. So-called sleep content is categorized using descriptive tags such as #passedout and #iCheck. And so this is where the first bit of kind of misinformation stemmed from and why it was kind of like exaggerated over time and sort of grew out of control. Many sites are now reporting this as 62 million men joined a rape academy, but that's not what happened. The 62 million site visits is for the entire website. And that's 62 million site visits, not 62 million users. So it could be a number of users visiting a number of times. It's also, like I say, the entire site, not just this particular problematic section of it. So saying that this had 62 million men who were in that group is like saying that, you know, YouTube gets X million or billion views a day. I post feminist content on YouTube, therefore everyone who visits YouTube, there are billions of feminists out there. That's not how it works. This particular section of the website was one small part of a larger website, just like, for example, my channel is just one small part of YouTube. I get, you know, X 100,000 views a month, but YouTube gets billions of views a month. This website, Motherless, got 63 million views a month, but this particular area only got in the tens or hundreds of thousands. I say only, that's still too many, and we'll discuss more about that in detail, but this is where the misinformation stems from. Obviously, even if it is tens or hundreds of thousands of views in that particular area, like I say, that is still too many, that is still disturbing, but it's important that we report on the actual facts and not blow this out of proportion, be like 62 million men when it's not, because misinformation only stunts the conversation and stops the important things from actually being discussed. We shouldn't be making up information of saying 62 million men are into this when they're not. What we should be looking at is how many views did these individual videos get, how many views did this section of the site get, and how many individual users were there. For example, in the Telegram group, which was kind of linked to the site, there were 1,000 members in that group. That's obviously a lot less than 62 million, but it's still 1,000 too many, you know? But it's important that we're really, really accurate in how we discuss this. The CNN article went on to say, in these videos, men film themselves lifting the closed eyelids of women to show that they are sleeping or sedated, with some eye check videos surpassing 50,000 views. Inside the motherless sleep community, first reported by German investigative journalist Isabel Speer and Isabel Stroh, I really hope I'm pronouncing her surname right, sorry, members trade advice on how to drug their partners. On the Triple Z chat group, which a motherless user had linked to and where we first met, how do I pronounce that? I think it's another German name. Peter, I guess. Please tell me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm useless when it comes to like German names and any kind of Eastern European name in general. I'm useless. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so on the Triple Z chat group, they do the same. CNN is not providing the names and doses of the specific medicines the users said they employ, which I think is a really good choice. So this is where we get some more specific numbers and some real numbers, but these aren't the ones being reported on for some reason. Even having one of these videos with 50,000 views, and for the mass response of those 50,000 views to not be calling it out, to not be discussed, to not be reporting these videos is terrifying. That means there have been likely tens of thousands of people watching this video and not seeing anything wrong with it. That is a massive, massive problem. And that's just one video. It doesn't account for the fact there were probably hundreds of this kind of video on the site, each with tens of thousands of views, some with hundreds of thousands of views. That's what's not okay. The article also provided some of the messages that were shared in the Telegram group. User 1 said, been wanting to do this to my missus for ages. I can get blank name of a drug, but honestly, crap scared of overdose. User 2 says, always start low. You're thinking long game, so if first time ain't enough, up the dose. User 3 said, put X amount of milliliters in a milkshake. She felt nauseous, so gave her a tablet of Imodium, was actually blank. Did F her as well, but she was not out enough and had no more drug on me. It's repulsive, isn't it? I can't imagine my partner talking about me this way. It's terrifying to think that, honestly, any man you could meet could be doing this. It's scary. The article went on to say, one motherless user claimed to be running a business selling and dispatching sleeping liquids to any address in the world. The man who said he was based in, how do you say that? Ceuta, I guess? A tiny Spanish enclave on the North African coast, said on his Telegram account that it would cost €150, approximately $175, for a bottle of liquid that he said was tasteless and odorless. Your wife won't feel anything and won't remember anything, he said. And they actually show pictures of him like packaging up this stuff and sending it out. Yeah, absolutely insane. So note again how this man was on the north coast of Africa, and that the original story was outed and exposed by German journalists because they found a hell of a lot of activity on that site in Germany. Many news outlets out there are reporting this as a purely American problem, saying, because a lot of users are from America, this is an American problem, it's an American man thing, but it's not. This is very much a global problem affecting women all over the world. This is not just affecting American women, this is affecting women in Europe, in Africa, probably in Australia and Asia as well. It's just, we shouldn't be downplaying this or pretending it's just an American issue when this is a global issue. The article also went on to say that some men were making money off the abuse of their wives by live streaming the abuse and taking requests in exchange for payment, which is just disgusting. The article says, while the platforms vary inside such groups, video is king. Some users advertise live streams showing the abuse of drugged women in real time for $20 per viewer, with cryptocurrency the preferred means of payment. The CNN journalist spoke to one guy who was doing this and said, how are your streams going? Making any money? And a user said, yeah, it went well. That night, 3 guys bought, and I streamed my unconscious wife to them. The CNN reporter said, did they direct you? And the user said, they told me what to do, and I did it. Obviously, they didn't know they were speaking to a CNN reporter, but, they've got all the receipts for it, obviously. The article went on to say, another user who said he was based in West Africa shared a clip from a previous live stream he said he'd done to entice us to his next. In it, a woman, who he said was his sleeping wife, could be heard snoring as he climbs on top of her, then the clip ends. In Poland, the woman, the person they were talking to, I guess Peter, said was his wife, also appears to be unaware of what's happening to her. He said, I still have a few photos, but it's hard for me to put her to sleep. Many of these groups operate shielded by the anonymity of the internet, but they also find a sense of community and perverse camaraderie as they normalize abuse. For months, I really haven't pronounced it. Let me Google how to pronounce that. You know what? I Googled the name. So apparently it's the Polish version of Peter, but it's pronounced like Piotr. Piotr. I'm so bad at it. I'm so sorry. Please don't mind me if I try and pronounce it as Peter for now, because I'm from Yorkshire, I'm useless, I'm so sorry. So for months, he spoke openly with us and even shared what he said was his address, which is interesting. In messages, he said 2 sleeping tablets should be enough, plus some drinks. Even one's enough if there's more alcohol. The CNN report said, does your wife suspect anything? And their informant said, for now I'm hiding everything well, but I have to be careful. But when it came to meeting face to face, he resisted. We wanted to confirm he was who he said he was, so we travelled to his hometown in Poland. CNN found him and his wife at a local restaurant. Uncertain how he might react and unwilling to put her in danger, we chose not to confront him, instead reaching out to police about our findings, which I think is a pretty good choice to make. Peter, oh my god, I'm useless, I'm so sorry. He's just one actor in a vast global network, his wife likely among many unaware victims, but some survivors do know. And then the article goes on to talk about some survivors who have found out they were victims of this and how it's affected them. And again, I think it's really important that we listen to their stories and understand, and not just focus on the 62 million men, because that's putting the perpetrators at the front of this story and not the actual survivors, who are what matter here. They are who matter. When Zoe Watts learned that her husband of 16 years had been crushing her son's sleeping medication into her tea and raping her while she was passed out, it shattered her world. She says, "We worry about who's coming behind us walking down the street, or who's even friending us on Facebook. You know, we worry about going to our car late at night in a car park, but we don't worry about who you lie next to. I didn't realize I had to." Her then husband's confession came on an otherwise ordinary Sunday in 2018 after the couple, who share 4 children, had returned from church. So again, the people doing this can be absolutely anyone, even people who seem to be good people from the outside. You know, churchgoers, family men, can be absolutely anyone. She says he reeled off a list of wrongdoings as if it was, a shopping list. This one, by the way, is from Devon, here in England. So again, when I say this is a global problem, I mean this is a global problem. He told her the abuse had been going on for years. He just sort of said, "I've been using our son's sleeping medication to put in your last cup of tea at night, to tie you down, take photographs, and rape you." You know what? Shocking that he called it rape, though, because a lot of these men don't want to admit to it, but we'll talk about that in a moment. The admission left Watts questioning all their intimate moments. "At the end of a very busy day, I was just grateful I had a cup of tea before I went to bed, because I was so tired and didn't have to make it," she said, adding, "You don't expect anything other than innocence coming from your partner." After a serious panic attack, Watts told her sister, then their mother called the police. While she believes pressing charges was the right decision, at the time, it was agonizing. A 4-year legal process saw her children become targets for bullying at school and left her social network all but destroyed. I've had people say, "Yeah, but he's your husband," or "But weren't you away? So it's not the same as being taken down an alleyway, is it?" Except it is. It absolutely is. In some ways, you could argue it's worse, because there's an extra layer of betrayal from someone you're supposed to trust and who's supposed to love you. Her ex-husband is serving an 11-year sentence for rape, sexual assault by penetration, and drugging. And I think this is one of the most important things that this story highlights. And it reminds me of, I saw a really gross comment over on my second channel the other day that repulsed me so much. I blocked the person who wrote it because I was just like, no, not dealing with this nonsense, it's awful. She basically said that she blamed a rape victim for being raped because she chose to go on a date with her rapist in the first place, and she didn't believe it was even really sexual assault because the victim apparently froze up and so didn't have any bruises on her. And she said that if I was ever raped, then you'd know it, because I'd be fighting back and screaming and I'd have like defensive wounds on me, and that's how you know it'd be real rape. And I was so disgusted in so many ways, because one, you never know how you'll react in that situation until you're actually in it. And I really hope most people never have to find out how they'd react, but until it happens to you, you don't know. You absolutely don't know. 2, there's no one right way to respond to rape. Some people fight back, some people freeze, some people fawn. For some, it's a mixture of the above. And no matter what response you have to it, it doesn't invalidate your experience or change whether it was rape or not. And 3, just because the perpetrator was someone you know, or someone you agreed to go on a date with, or maybe they're already your partner or your husband or an ex or anything like that, or a friend, just because it's someone you know and previously interacted with, or maybe even you previously consented to an interaction with them, that doesn't mean they can't rape you. And if they do, it doesn't mean it's your fault. Just looking at the UK stats, and please take these numbers with a pinch of salt, because we do know that rape in general is woefully underreported. But according to the reported stats in 2025, for victims who had experienced rape or assault by penetration, including attempts, since the age of 16 years, over half, that's 54.7%, were assaulted by a partner or ex-partner. And if you want sources for all this, I'll leave it down in the video description. And it's not just rape women have to worry about. Statistically, the most dangerous space for a woman to exist in is her own home. The United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime estimates that around the world, every 11 seconds, a woman or girl is killed by someone in their own family, usually in their own home. In 2021 alone, UN Women reported that 81,000 women and girls were killed around the world, with over 65% of them being murdered by an intimate partner or other family member, usually fathers, brothers, and uncles. All men. The femicide census found that in 2021, men are killing one woman every 3 days in the UK, with over half of them being killed by a partner or former partner. The idea that threat and danger only comes from strangers is something that we need to change. We need to be aware where the danger actually comes from, who the actual threats are. Of course, it's impossible to know exactly who is dangerous. Many of the men on these sites, like in the sleep section of the Motherless website and in this Telegram group, they look and act just like anyone else. Their wives and girlfriends wouldn't necessarily know anything was wrong, on the whole. And if they do suspect something, then abusers are often quick to gaslight them and make them feel crazy and make them feel like it's their own fault, rather than admit to what they've done. Listen to this next story from the CNN article. In the town of Wigan in the northwest of England, Amanda Stanhope, who too was raped by her ex-partner, said Giselle Pellicot's strength inspired her to speak out. Over a 5-year period, Stanhope said she would often fall asleep without remembering how, and would wake up to bruises on her body and in different clothes, with a towel under her without any memory as to why. After waking up a few times to her partner violently raping her, Stanhope knew something was wrong and asked him to stop. Instead, Stanhope said she was gaslit. So I know a lot of people will blame these women, but will be like, well, why didn't you know? Surely they were clear. Even if people do know and they or think they know, and they ask questions and they try and get it to stop, you'll have situations like this where they're gaslit beyond belief, where they're told they're the crazy ones, where they're just they have all their questions and gut feelings pushed back against, She says, he would then turn on me and say, well, you're on too much medication, you must be imagining it. That didn't happen, you're mental, you're crazy. So even though I felt 100% sure that something had happened, he was trying to change my reality, saying that it hadn't happened, even though the physical signs were there. So I don't understand how anyone can blame these women in this situation. The article goes on to say, with the support of her brother, Stanhope eventually went to the police. Her former partner was charged with rape and sexual assault. He took his own life before the case ever went to court. Sharing her story is part of Stanhope's healing process, but the trauma has unequivocally changed her outlook. I see everyone as a potential predator, Stanhope said, adding, it took my innocence for people away. Another story for you. Survivor Valentina, a mother of 2 who lives in northern Italy and who asked CNN to not use her real name, said she too has a hard time trusting anyone. Again, please note, this is a global issue. We've now seen cases of this happening in multiple parts of Africa, multiple parts of the UK, across Europe, North America. Do you want any more examples of how this is a global problem? But she said, I can't conceive of the fact that a woman could be treated like slaughterhouse meat, because in the end, that's what I was. She discovered videos that her husband of 20 years had filmed, showing him abusing her after he drugged her with alcohol and sedatives. She said, I was lucky to find the videos because truly it would have been a bit difficult to believe because I had no marks. Valentina doesn't remember the abuse, but it left psychological scars. She said, no matter how much you try to brush it off, it's always right there beside you, the experience you've had. It just takes a bed, a camera, a different scent to trigger her. The article goes on to say, some forms of pornography have long normalized violence against women as entertainment, with algorithms that favor extreme content further pushing exploitative material into the mainstream, experts say. And this is something I've spoken about a lot in my videos, where I talk about this normalization of violence against women in often books, but other media as well. This romanticization of rape and sexual violence, I do think it's problematic, and a lot of people push back against me. They're like, yeah, how can you say that? And I'm like, when we normalize sexual violence against women, it's gonna have a effect on, people as a whole. It absolutely contributes to rape culture in general, and I'm not going to apologise for trying to push back against that, Claire McGlynn, a law professor at Britain's Durham University and an expert on violence against women and girls, told CNN that the growing presence of voyeuristic material on mainstream porn sites glorifies abusive behaviours both on and offline. It's a problem that many men and many people in society aren't taking seriously enough, she said. And I completely agree. For users within the online sleep porn community, the thrill of the abuse is not only in the act itself, but in the collective dynamics surrounding it, said Annabelle Montagna, a psychologist who assessed half of the men convicted in the Pellicott trial, including Dominique, who organised the crimes. She said within these sites there is also the notion of almost brotherhood. She added that participants find themselves creating bonds that meet and reinforce their narcissistic needs. Sandrine Josso, a French lawmaker who, after being drugged by a former French senator, has campaigned to raise awareness about drug-facilitated sexual abuse, called the groups schools of violence. I would even call them an online rape academy where every subject is taught. There are all the subjects and disciplines needed to become a good rapist or sexual predator, she said. And it's while discussing this bit that I want to correct another bit of misinformation, because a lot of the articles and coverage out there use this phrase, Rape Academy, as a kind of shocking clickbaity title and suggest that this is the name of the group itself or a section of a website that men are actively going to, like they're actively signing up for Rape Academy like they would Tate University or one of these other stupid manosphere groups or something like that. But it's not a thing that men are like looking for. They're not like, I'm going to join the Rape Academy. I want to be part of Rape Academy. This is a name that a lawmaker has given to it that's kind of, I mean, it's fitting, it absolutely is. But she's saying it's like a Rape Academy. These men aren't choosing to join a rape academy. And I think that's a very important distinction that we need to make. I'm pointing this out not because it makes the men's behavior any better or worse than it would otherwise, but just that it's different. And it raises a different problem than it would if they were signing up for a rape academy, you know what I mean? By using these relatively safe sounding terms like sleep and zzz, the triple Z, or eye check or something like that, rather than labeling it what it is, rape, assault, violence, these men are able to detach themselves from what they're doing. They're not actually joining a rape academy, they're just part of a sleep group. You see what I mean? These soft terms make it sound less serious than it is. These men might be thinking to themselves, well, they'd never rape a woman. But I mean, if it's your wife and she's asleep and she doesn't know, you can do stuff to her, but it's not like it's rape, is it? Of course it is, but they're justifying it. They're distancing themselves, they're detaching themselves, they're downplaying the seriousness of what they're doing. Again, this is like a massive part of exacerbating rape culture, in that men detach themselves from this and like, well, rape is bad, and I'd never rape, I'm not a rapist. But, and that's one of the huge problems, when that kind of behavior is so socially acceptable. So in the book, What We Talk About When We Talk About Rape by Sahela Abdullahi, who is a great author, I've mentioned this book before, very, very good. She writes, are all men capable of rape? In my own life, I cannot accept this. Here is what one man said when I asked if he thought he could imagine raping someone. For myself, I would say no, he said. There's a level of empathy that would make it impossible for me. I believed him. Think about it. There is no reasonable reason to rape. You're either doing it explicitly to cause damage, or because you want sex and don't understand or care that the other person does not want it. And she goes on to talk about the motives of people who do rape. Rape often has a twisted value component. You value your own needs more than your victim. And again, she goes on to tell one survivor's story. Audrey, the British young woman who was gang raped in Italy, told me that one of her rapists said in his police statement that he didn't need to rape to get women. He was so naturally attractive that women just flocked to him. In his mind, it wasn't even rape. She was just lying there, clearly fine with it, so what was the problem? Audrey even went on to say that the judge in her case sided with her rapists. The judge and prosecutor seemed to share this perspective to an extent, that rape was something only real psychos jumping out of bushes did, or losers who couldn't get sex any other way. It was not something that good-looking, well-dressed young men needed to resort to. I guess I would respond today that rape is not really about sexual attraction or having sex in the first place. And I think this sums up a lot of what is going on with these men on these sleep sites and so on. It's clearly not just about attraction or sex, because, these are their wives, who they've probably had a pretty healthy, normal sex life with before any of this happened, and before they knew what was being done to them when they were unconscious. These men could have likely had these women anytime they wanted with their consent, if that's all it was, if it was just about attraction. But there was clearly something more happening here. Something about wanting the control or the power, or just wanting to show off and perform for other men. It's clear that for a lot of these men, what they were doing, they probably didn't see as rape. They weren't being violent as such. They weren't jumping out of bushes at strangers. They weren't stalking women down the street and grabbing them. They were in bed with their wives, people who'd said yes to them plenty of times before, so it couldn't be that bad, right? And it's not like these women were crying or fighting back, so it couldn't really be rape. If we ignore the fact that they literally couldn't because they were drugged, This is why, as a society, having a misunderstanding of what rape is and isn't is so damn dangerous, because it allows men like this to have this cognitive dissonance and be able to rationalize and justify and make exceptions for their own actions, even when we as outsiders can see how dangerous and wrong they are. These men don't realize the full extent of the damage they're doing and the trauma they're causing and how violent their actions actually are. Like I said earlier, so many of these men probably don't even think of themselves as rapists because they don't conform to whatever stereotypical image of a rapist they have in their heads. Mask wearing, violent, hiding in bushes, targeting strangers, and so on. But, as our feminist author Sohaila writes, the uncomfortable truth is that a rapist is just a guy. Any guy who rapes. Or woman, or non-binary person. We need to, acknowledge that as well, but you know what I'm saying. The point is, you become a rapist by raping someone, not because you are this or this or this. That's all there is to it. And that's exactly what the men on this Telegram group and in these videos on this sleep portion of the Motherless website were doing. They were raping. Every person who watched those videos or read those chats without pushing back, without fighting back, without doing something about it, without reporting the content, was actively enabling rape. They were absolutely all part of the problem. I saw a great little post online a while ago which said something like, sure, it's not all men, but out of 10 men, one does this, blah, blah, blah. And it was really good and made sense. And I feel like my own little variation of this is, out of any 10 men, one is a rapist, 2 know he's a rapist and don't speak up about it. 2 know what happened, but they don't believe that what he did was really rape. 2 hear the stories about it, but they don't believe him because, what about false accusations? Another 2 hear the stories and think, yeah, I guess what he did was wrong, but they don't actually speak up about it or push back on what he's done because, they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to be left out from the group, do they? And only one guy has the courage to actually say, that guy's a rapist and I want nothing to do with him, and I am going to warn people about him. And that is the problem with rape culture in general. Out of 10 men, only 1 might be a rapist, but 8 others are enabling him, and only 1 man is actually safe in that situation. And that's the problem. Because though, 9 of those men will say, hey, I'm a good guy, but they're not, are they? If you're enabling a rapist, if you're making excuses for him, if you don't push back on what he's done, if you don't actually believe what he's done is rape, if you make excuses for him, then you are actively part of the problem. You are still enabling a rapist. And I think that is very much part of the problem with this website and Telegram group. Only a small percentage of the men on those groups and viewing those web pages were actively making those videos, but a much larger proportion were acting out the same scenarios in real life and raping the women in their lives and buying the sleeping tablets to, use on their partners, but without an audience. And then an even larger percentage of that were watching this happen and paying to see it and paying to have their fantasies played out on these women and encouraging it. And an even larger percentage still were silently watching this and not calling it out and not reporting the content and not saying, hey, don't do this. And they are all part of the problem. If these videos had tens and hundreds of thousands of views, then clearly there were people seeing this and not doing anything about it. Where are all the people who would see this and say, that's wrong, you need to stop? Hey, motherless, why are you hosting this? Just because they weren't the ones doing the raping, that doesn't mean they weren't enabling the rape. For every person who saw that content and didn't do something about it, they are part of the problem. They are enabling the rape. Remember that despite what the misleading headline said, this wasn't actually 62 million men participating in rape and learning how to rape, but it was still tens, if not hundreds of thousands of men watching and condoning, staying silent and not speaking up. And there were thousands actively partaking in the discussions and encouraging others to do this, paying to see it done to other people. Hundreds of men were still doing it themselves, many of them creating content on it and making money off it. There were still hundreds of women who were victims, and that is just too many. It might not have been 62 million, but it was still more than it should be. The CNN article went on to say, meanwhile, the landscape of drug-facilitated assault is continuing to evolve, with perpetrators pivoting to more readily available prescription medicines that act quickly and leave little trace in the body, compared to the date-rape drugs of the past, making it harder for such cases to make their way to trial. US-based sleep specialist Michael Kramer-Bornman told CNN, it's difficult to know how widespread drug-facilitated sexual assault is, as reliable data is limited. Across Europe, most criminal justice systems either lack specific monitoring systems for drug-facilitated sexual assault or do not include it as a separate category in official crime statistics, meaning there's no fully comparable Europe-wide dataset on such assaults. And again, that's just a problem for Europe. Think about the rest of the world. This is a topic where reliable specific data is scarce by design, a World Health Organization spokesperson told CNN, adding that there are no accurate estimates of this type of abuse due to how underreported it is. And a big part of that is because a lot of the victims don't know that it's happening. But that doesn't mean they won't be in some way traumatized by it. So take, for example, the woman who thought it was happening to her and her husband told her she was crazy, she wasn't imagining this. She still had the trauma from that. She still had the psychological issues from that. She was still a victim and hurt by that. And then on top of that, she was told that it wasn't true, and there was more trauma added to that because she started to doubt herself and feel like she was going crazy. And then because of all this, there was just no proof of what was happening to her, really. So she had no one else telling her this was happening. She had no backup or support, but she was still a victim. Does this make sense? Yeah, sorry, I'm rambling now. It's quite emotional. The article went on to say, and the person from the World Health Organization said, many go unreported because victims feel embarrassment, guilt, or perceived responsibility, or because they have limited memory of the assault. But again, just because it's hard to prove it happened, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. That doesn't mean these men aren't still rapists. It doesn't mean these victims aren't still victims and survivors. The article goes on to say, in England and Wales, the jurisdiction in which survivors Watts and Stanhope live, 43% of recorded sexual assaults involve a partner or ex-partner, according to March 2025 data. That's probably the same data I quoted earlier, marking a minor decrease from 45% 5 years ago. The proportion of victims recorded as having been assaulted while unconscious or asleep, however, has risen to 23% from 21% over the last decade. Conviction rates for sexual assault across Europe, as in the US, remain low. This comes as no surprise to Stanhope. She says she was shocked by the initial police response to a video that showed her former partner sexually assaulting her while she was unconscious. I thought, there's evidence, and the police said to me, well, we can't use that. That isn't clear evidence because it looks like you're pretending to be asleep. This is what gets me. You can literally see a person being raped. They can say, I was raped. And often men, and sometimes women as well, will say, yeah, but how do we really know it happened? There is, if I said to you right now, oh yeah, I had my bike stolen the other day, people will be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, that's awful. But if I said, I was raped the other day, people would be like, were you really? I don't believe that. Thankfully, neither of those happened to me. But my point is, when we hear people say they were a victim of a crime, we have very different responses. We tend to believe some and not others, and we need to start thinking about why. Why are we so willing to give the benefit of the doubt to someone accused of rape, but not, for example, someone accused of theft or something else? The article went on to say, police eventually charged Stanhope's former partner, but her experience underscores why victims of domestic abuse often do not report these crimes. During the course of CNN's investigation, the ZZZ group was taken off the messaging platform Telegram. Telegram didn't respond directly to CNN's questions about the ZZZ group, but in a statement to CNN following publication of this report, it said that content that encourages sexual violence is explicitly forbidden by its terms of service and is removed whenever discovered. So the question remains, why wasn't it discovered sooner? With around 1,000 members in that Telegram group, why was there not a single one of them with a conscience who thought, maybe this is wrong, maybe I should report this? And this is exactly the culture problem I was talking about before. When you can have 1,000 people all together in one space, watching people rape people, talking about raping people, encouraging others to rape people, and not a single one of them has any bit of guilt which makes them take steps to stop it happening, that is a rape culture problem. And I know, of course, there's the argument of well, why would any of them want to report it because they want to be there? And I know, I understand that. But the point is, it's shocking to me that you can find 1,000 people and get them together and for not one of them to have any kind of crisis of conscience about that. Shocking. Now, apparently that area of the Motherless site has been taken down, but they're like, yeah, it's not our fault, if we'd known. And there's lots of issues with the laws around this kind of content, which means that just nothing can really be done about it. Even in countries where this stuff is illegal, often these kinds of sites are hosted in countries where it's not illegal. So even if, for example, you're a victim of this in the UK where it's illegal, if it's hosted on another site, you can't necessarily get that taken. If it's hosted on a site from another country, you can't necessarily get it taken down, and there's all kinds of issues with this. Oh, gosh. Anyway, that's where I want to end this video before I get too emotional about this, because I know it's a lot, and I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this. but it's something that I just want to talk about, raise awareness about, and also address some of the misconceptions and misinformation about this, because I do find that to be a problem, and I think it's something that we need to talk about. So please let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please be kind to each other. And just know, I've had a lot of people recently, like on my Jack Demo video, on this on my second channel, all defending him as a convicted rapist and saying that he was falsely accused. I'm like, no, he's a convicted rapist. I can call him a convicted rapist. Like, I absolutely believe his victim, like, that's it. And anyone who's gonna, like, defend rape and be essentially pro-rape and be like, false accusation, no, I just block those people now. I don't have time for it. There's more important things in the world than, like, pretending to, like, accept people who are pro-rape. I'm done with it. None of that. So, if you want to leave a comment, please be kind. Please add to the discussion in a productive, helpful way. Don't be like, but I don't believe you. Like, stop that, please. No. We'll have no victim blaming here. We'll have no rape advocacy here, as in, like, pro-rape. Well, none of that. None of that. But if you want to speak out in support of the survivors, tell your own story or experience with this, share your own thoughts and feelings on this, add any topics or points of discussion that I've not covered, please do. I think that's really good and really important. But yeah, for now, thank you for watching. I'm sorry, I know this was a heavy one, but I appreciate you and your time, and thank you so much for watching.